Foolio's final hours are finally coming to light, and what we've uncovered will shock you to your core. Fans thought they knew the story, but everything you've heard so far barely scratches the surface. Late last week, sources close to the situation revealed details that paint a completely different picture, one that nobody saw coming. It wasn't just another tragic end in the music world. This was a chain of events that involved secrecy, betrayal, and moments that were captured in fragments, never meant for public eyes. Tonight, we break it all down, minute by minute, hour by hour, so you can finally understand what truly happened in those last moments before Foolio's world changed forever. People close to him described a tension that was palpable, the kind that doesn't show up in headlines or social media posts. Friends, associates, and even some unexpected strangers played roles in a timeline that's as complicated as it is heartbreaking. From the moment Foolio stepped out that night, to the last phone calls he made, and the messages that were never sent, each detail tells a story of suspense, uncertainty, and raw emotion. And here's the kicker: some of what happened wasn't even documented. There were moments seen only by a few, moments that could have changed everything if they had surfaced earlier. What makes this story even more intense is how close it hits to the truth behind the persona we all knew. Foolio wasn't just a rising star. He was a figure navigating dangerous situations, making moves, and dealing with pressures that fans could never imagine. The truth is messy, complicated, and in many ways, shocking. From confrontations that escalated faster than anyone expected, to decisions made in the blink of an eye, every second counts in understanding what unfolded. Tonight, you're going to see the timeline in a way nobody has ever pieced together before. The real story, the moments missed by cameras, the whispers behind closed doors, it's all here. By the end of this video, you'll realize that Foolio's final hours weren't just tragic. They were a shocking revelation of everything happening behind the scenes, everything nobody was supposed to see. Buckle up, because once you hear this story, your entire perception of those last hours will change forever. The night began quietly, almost deceptively so. Foolio moved through the city like a man with a plan. Yet beneath his calm exterior, tension coiled tightly around him. Every step, every glance, every phone call seemed measured, but there was an unspoken weight in the air that only a few could sense. He spent the early evening pacing in his studio apartment, running through thoughts that no one else could hear, preparing for meetings and encounters that would define the hours ahead. Friends described him as unusually quiet, a far cry from the energy he usually carried. But nobody could have imagined the storm that was quietly gathering around him. As the night deepened, he stepped out to meet someone he thought he could trust. The streets were quieter than usual, the city lights casting long shadows across empty sidewalks, as if the world itself was holding its breath. He lingered outside a corner store for a few moments, speaking in hushed tones on his phone, constantly checking behind him. Every movement was precise, every decision weighted with instinct. A simple text he sent to a close friend, "I'll be back soon," would later be dissected, a tiny breadcrumb in a trail that only hinted at the tension surrounding him. What seemed like normal precautions at the time would later reveal themselves as signs of awareness, of a man sensing danger before it fully revealed itself. By late evening, he was in his car, preparing for a meeting that should have been routine. Surveillance footage captured him adjusting mirrors, shifting uneasily, his eyes scanning the streets with subtle alertness. Around him, the city's hum was unusually low, a quietness that made every distant sound feel amplified. He arrived at a familiar location, a place where he had conducted business many times before. Yet that night, everything felt different. The shadows seemed darker, movements in peripheral vision sharper, almost predatory. Unknown to him, someone had been watching, waiting, calculating every move, as the city itself became a silent accomplice in the events unfolding. A confrontation happened quickly, a brief exchange that could have been overlooked in another context but carried immense weight that night. Words spoken with urgency, glances exchanged with silent warnings, a tension that simmered just below the surface. Trust was no longer a given. Actions that had seemed routine moments before now felt heavy with consequence. He altered his route multiple times, attempting to stay ahead of the invisible pressures closing in. Every decision seemed minor, yet each was critical, shaping a timeline that would later astonish anyone trying to piece it together. By midnight, the subtle unease had escalated. He made call after call, reached out to contacts he hadn't spoken to in months, and moved with a careful pace through streets that suddenly felt alive with unknown forces. Shadows and alleyways, unfamiliar cars lingering at corners, subtle shifts in the air. These small details compounded, layering tension upon tension. Everything in those hours was a delicate balance, a choreography of instinct and survival. And the smallest misstep could unravel everything he had carefully navigated. Even as he moved, there was a growing sense that events were aligning in a way that no one could control. The quiet moments, the missed signs, the whispers behind closed doors, these invisible threads pulled at the edges of his reality, creating a pressure cooker of suspense and unpredictability. Those who glimpsed him that night later admitted that he seemed alert in ways they had never seen before, a mixture of calculation and instinct that hinted at his understanding of danger, even if he didn't yet see its full shape. By the time Foolio left the familiar location, the streets had changed around him. The city that had felt like home earlier in the evening now seemed sharper, more unpredictable, every corner carrying a potential threat. He moved with purpose, but there was a subtle shift in his posture, a tightened awareness in his eyes that only those who knew him well could recognize. His phone buzzed constantly, messages appearing from people he trusted, and some he didn't. Each notification pulled him in different directions, demanding attention, forcing decisions that he had no margin for error to make. Even a single missed detail could unravel the night entirely. As he drove, the hum of the engine felt louder than usual, and the distant sounds of the city seemed to echo with a tension that mirrored his own. Somewhere down the road, headlights flashed from a car that lingered too long at a corner, and for the briefest moment, he felt the prickling instinct of being watched. It wasn't paranoia, it was experience. Every choice, every turn, every glance mattered now more than ever. He called a close associate, but the line crackled, the conversation halting in a way that left. He pulled over briefly, checking mirrors, scanning the streets. Even in familiar neighborhoods, everything seemed slightly off. A car parked too far from the curb, a shadow moving against the streetlight, footsteps echoing at odd intervals. He was aware that someone might be following him, and yet he had no way of knowing who was friend or foe. Each moment stretched, every decision layered with unseen consequences. His phone buzzed again, this time a message that made him pause, a warning, vague but urgent, that hinted at danger he hadn't fully anticipated. He read it, held his breath, and made a decision that would change the trajectory of the night. The next encounter came suddenly. A figure stepped out from the shadows, moving with quiet precision toward him. Foolio's instincts kicked in immediately, his heart rate climbing, his eyes scanning for options, for escape, for anything that could give him an edge. Words were exchanged quickly, tense and loaded with meaning. The kind of exchange where every syllable carries weight far beyond the obvious. One wrong gesture, one missed signal, and the balance could tip entirely. He stayed calm outwardly, but inside, adrenaline surged, sharpening every sense to an almost unbearable degree. He made his way to another location, a place he had hoped would be safe, a place where he could regroup and plan the next steps. Yet as he arrived, he realized that safety was an illusion that night. Faces he thought he could trust carried hidden agendas, and the quiet presence of observers he hadn't noticed added a layer of tension that was impossible to ignore. Each interaction was a delicate dance, a balance of words, gestures, and timing that required absolute precision. He moved carefully, knowing that even the smallest misstep could have irreversible consequences. Time seemed to stretch unnaturally. Minutes felt like hours, and every passing second carried an amplified sense of risk. The city lights flickered over him, shadows morphing into shapes that played tricks on the mind, reflecting the uncertainty and danger surrounding him. He paused again, checking his phone, coordinating with a friend who had insisted on staying close throughout the night. The messages were fragmented, anxious, but necessary, a lifeline in a night when nothing could be taken for granted. The weight of choices, the pressure of circumstance, and the relentless pace of unfolding events pressed heavily on him. Somewhere in the midst of it all, he felt a strange mixture of clarity and dread. He knew that the decisions he was making in these hours were critical, that one wrong step could trigger consequences that would echo far beyond the night. And yet, despite the fear, there was determination. He moved with intention, alert and calculating, aware that the story being written that night would be one few would ever fully understand. Behind the scenes, in the spaces between calls and conversations, the unseen elements of the city, the lingering observers, the silent threats, the fragments of information that had gone unnoticed, were converging into a tension that had no outlet, a storm waiting to break. Even as the night edged toward its most critical moments, Foolio continued navigating with skill and instinct, making choices that balanced survival with strategy. The hours were a blur of motion, decisions, and narrow escapes, all amplified by the shadows of uncertainty pressing in from every side. It was clear to anyone watching, even from a distance, that this was no ordinary night. It was a culmination of pressure, preparation, and unseen forces colliding, a chain of events that would leave its mark on everyone involved. And as he moved forward, he had no idea that the moments he was living now would soon become the pieces of a story so shocking that no one outside that night could have imagined it. The air grew colder as the night deepened, but Foolio hardly noticed. Every sound, every movement, every flicker of light demanded his attention. His instincts, honed over years of navigating a world full of risk and hidden threats, were on high alert. He could feel the tension pressing in on him, subtle at first but increasingly palpable. Even familiar streets seemed to twist into unfamiliar landscapes, every corner carrying potential danger. Shadows that had once been background details now became active participants in a silent, high-stakes game he hadn't agreed to play. He stopped briefly at a dimly lit intersection, his eyes scanning the surrounding buildings, his mind racing through all possible outcomes. His phone buzzed again, a short, cryptic message that made his stomach knot. It wasn't the first warning he'd received that night, and it wouldn't be the last. Each notification seemed to tighten the invisible pressure around him, forcing him to think faster, move more carefully, and trust less freely. Somewhere in the distance, a car engine hummed quietly, then disappeared, leaving him uncertain whether it had been coincidence or surveillance. He exhaled slowly, forcing his pulse to steady, but the sense of inevitability had already begun to settle. As he continued moving, a brief encounter shook him more than expected. A familiar face appeared suddenly, someone he had trusted implicitly, but the tension in their voice and the way they avoided eye contact told a different story. Words were exchanged, measured but loaded, the conversation a delicate dance between loyalty and hidden intent. Foolio's instincts screamed caution, and he responded with precision, careful not to reveal panic, careful not to give away knowledge he didn't yet possess. Every gesture mattered, every glance carried meaning, and one mistake could tip the night into chaos. The streets seemed to close in around him as he moved toward another location, a place he believed would offer clarity, a brief moment of control. Yet even as he entered, the room felt charged with a subtle electricity, a tension that made his skin crawl. People who should have been allies now radiated something else: uncertainty, hesitation, and in some cases, the faintest trace of malice. It was a reminder that in those final hours, perception could be as dangerous as reality. Every decision, every step, and every interaction became a thread in a web that was tightening invisibly around him. By the early hours, exhaustion should have slowed him down, but adrenaline kept him alert, his senses sharpened to an almost painful degree. His mind raced, connecting fragments of information, replaying snippets of conversations, analyzing every step he had taken that night. He realized that events were no longer linear. There were a network of possibilities, each choice branching into outcomes he could neither fully predict nor control. Somewhere outside, cars moved quietly, shadows lingered longer than they should, and the city itself seemed to hum with anticipation, an invisible audience to a story no one was meant. The tension peaked when an unexpected message forced him to make a critical decision. He could feel the weight of it pressing against him, the urgency unspoken but undeniable. He moved quickly, carefully choosing a path that balanced speed with caution, instinct with strategy. In that moment, every detail became magnified. The slight echo of footsteps behind him, the distant glare of headlights, the flicker of motion at the edge of his vision. He had learned to read these signs, to interpret the city's hidden language. And yet the night was teaching him lessons faster than he could process. As he navigated through the maze of streets, every second felt both stretched and compressed. The night became a series of critical junctures, each one a test of his awareness, patience, and resilience. He had to anticipate reactions, calculate moves, and trust instincts that sometimes contradicted each other. The smallest hesitation could have consequences he wasn't prepared to face. And even as he moved forward, the knowledge that unseen eyes were tracking him made each decision heavier, each path more fraught with risk. Despite the pressure, there were fleeting moments of clarity. In quiet pauses, he could map the night in his mind, noting patterns and possibilities, predicting who might appear next, and planning his moves with meticulous care. But these moments were rare, brief reprieves in a night dominated by uncertainty. Each step brought new variables, new people, and new dangers, all converging in a tension that had no outlet, a storm building silently around him. And through it all, Foolio pressed forward, moving with a mix of precision, instinct, and sheer determination, aware that every decision mattered, aware that the hours were slipping away, and aware that the story unfolding around him would soon become something unforgettable. The city had transformed by now into something almost unrecognizable. Streets that had seemed familiar hours before now felt like a labyrinth, each turn carrying the weight of unseen forces. Foolio's senses were razor-sharp, every footstep measured, every shadow analyzed. The night had grown heavier, dense with anticipation, as if the air itself had absorbed the tension that clung to him. Every phone buzz, every distant engine hum, every fleeting flicker of light seemed magnified, layering anxiety and focus in equal measure. He moved through it all with an awareness that bordered on instinct, a finely tuned vigilance shaped by experience and necessity. He paused briefly on a narrow street, leaning against the hood of his car, eyes scanning the darkness for anything out of place. His mind replayed the encounters of the past hours, the sudden appearances, the cryptic messages, the subtle shifts in behavior of people he thought he could trust. Each interaction now felt like part of a larger puzzle, a complex web of intentions, loyalties, and hidden agendas. It was almost impossible to know which path was safe, which step was fatal. Yet he forced himself to plan, to calculate, to stay ahead of the invisible pressures pressing in from all directions. A sudden movement in an alleyway drew his attention. He didn't flinch, didn't panic. Instead, he assessed, reading the shadows and sounds with practiced precision. Someone had been following him for hours, he realized, and the confrontation he had been avoiding was now unavoidable. Words were unnecessary. The presence alone carried an unspoken message, one that demanded acknowledgement and response. Foolio adjusted his stance, his body alert, every muscle ready to react to the slightest provocation. The tension was electric, palpable, and suffocating, a silent challenge that had been building all night. As he moved on, a brief conversation over the phone provided a sliver of guidance, a fragmented piece of information that could change everything. He absorbed it quickly, analyzing the implications, recalculating his route, adjusting his timing. Every decision now was critical, every choice a potential turning point. The city, which had seemed like a living maze earlier, now appeared as a network of moving threats and opportunities, all converging in a dangerous choreography that only he could navigate. One misstep could trigger a chain reaction, but he pressed forward, balancing instinct, logic, and courage in equal measure. Reaching another familiar location, he hoped for a momentary reprieve, a chance to regroup and strategize. But even here, the tension was inescapable. Faces he had counted on for support now carried uncertainty, and the shadows seemed to linger longer than they should. Every gesture, every glance, every half-word now carried significance. The night had transformed into a series of high-stakes calculations, each one demanding full attention and careful judgment. Foolio knew that he was walking a thin line between control and chaos, and the margin for error was razor-thin. By the early hours of the morning, exhaustion was beginning to weigh on him, but adrenaline and necessity kept him moving. He found himself retracing steps, checking over shoulders, adjusting plans based on fleeting information. The city felt alive, almost conspiratorial, as if it was aware of the unfolding drama and participating silently. Every turn, every stoplight, every distant noise became a signal to be interpreted, a potential threat or clue in the intricate puzzle of the night. It was a relentless, exhausting awareness, one that required constant focus, and yet he adapted, recalibrating constantly as the night pushed on. The most intense moments came unexpectedly. A sudden confrontation in a narrow street, a figure stepping out from the darkness, sent his heart racing. The exchange was brief, sharp, but loaded with meaning. No words were wasted, yet every gesture communicated far more than speech ever could. Foolio reacted with precision, moving fluidly, his instincts guiding him through a situation that could have easily escalated into disaster. The night had become a test of perception and speed, a relentless exercise in awareness, strategy, and survival. As the clock edged closer to dawn, the tension did not diminish, it intensified. Every detail, every choice, every fleeting signal mattered more than ever. He understood, with a clarity born of survival instinct, that the night's events were building toward a moment that could not be avoided. Each step, each interaction, each decision had been preparing him for the climax of the hours he had been navigating with caution, intelligence, and grit. And though the night still held surprises, he moved forward with determination, fully aware that what lay ahead would define everything that came before, leaving an indelible mark on the story that had quietly unfolded in ways no one could have anticipated. The city had begun to shift with the first hints of dawn, but the tension around Foolio had not eased. Every shadow, every faint sound, every reflection in a window demanded attention. He moved with calculated precision, but the weight of the night pressed heavily on him, a constant reminder that the hours behind him were merely preparation for the moment ahead. His mind raced, replaying the sequence of events, connecting the fragments, predicting what could happen next. Each step he took felt like crossing a line, where the margin between control and disaster was razor-thin. As he navigated the streets, he became increasingly aware of the invisible pressures converging on him. Vehicles lingered where they shouldn't, figures appeared just beyond the reach of light, and the quiet hum of the city carried an undercurrent of menace. He had learned to read these signals, to sense danger in ways few could comprehend, and yet the intensity of the night stretched his instincts to the limit. Every choice, every glance, every movement was critical. One misstep could trigger an irreversible sequence. One decision could change everything in an instant. An unexpected encounter escalated the tension further. Someone he had counted on for guidance appeared briefly, their expression unreadable, their words clipped and cautious. Foolio quickly assessed, adapted, and acted without hesitation, recognizing that even minor hesitation could have catastrophic consequences. The streets around him seemed to pulse with anticipation, almost as if the city itself had become a participant in the unfolding drama. Every corner held uncertainty, every alleyway the potential for revelation, every sound a hidden message. He pressed forward with an awareness sharpened by hours of vigilance, navigating a world that had become both familiar and entirely unpredictable. Time felt distorted. Minutes stretched and compressed simultaneously, a disorienting rhythm that heightened his focus. His phone buzzed intermittently, messages arriving in fragments, offering clues, warnings, or cryptic guidance. Each message required instant interpretation, rapid decision-making, and flawless execution. The night had been a series of critical junctures, each one testing his awareness, patience, and ability to anticipate outcomes. Now, everything converged. The final hours were no longer about movement or avoidance. They were about confrontation, about facing the culmination of a night shaped by secrecy, pressure, and unseen forces. As the first light of morning illuminated the streets, the culmination became unavoidable. Figures moved in coordinated precision, shadows intersecting with reality in ways he hadn't fully anticipated. Every previous encounter, every decision, every calculation had led to this moment. He responded instinctively, with agility, awareness, and the acute perception honed over years. Words became secondary. Every movement carried meaning. The tension was suffocating, almost unbearable, but he adapted, flowing through the situation with an almost surreal clarity. The sequence of events unfolded with astonishing rapidity. Threats emerged from unexpected angles. Alliances shifted with subtle gestures, and decisions once theoretical became matters of immediate consequence. He navigated through a maze of challenges, constantly recalibrating, balancing speed with caution, instinct with strategy. Each interaction now carried the weight of the entire night, every choice rippling outward in ways that could not be predicted. In those final moments, the unseen threads of tension, trust, and danger converged into a singular, explosive point that defined everything around him. By the time the dawn broke fully, the culmination of Foolio's night had left an indelible mark. The streets that had once seemed ordinary were now etched with the invisible traces of conflict, calculation, and raw survival. Every step he had taken, every interaction he had navigated, every split-second decision had contributed to a story that few would ever truly comprehend. The tension that had built invisibly throughout the hours now gave way to clarity, a sobering realization of how fragile control had been, how unpredictable the night had grown, and how swiftly events could escalate beyond expectation. In the final moments, there was a strange mixture of relief and awareness. Foolio understood that the night had been a test, one that demanded every ounce of vigilance, instinct, and intelligence he could muster. The city, once again quiet in the early morning light, seemed almost reflective, a witness to events that would soon become legend among those who had glimpsed even fragments of the truth. The culmination was not merely an ending. It was a revelation of the complexity, danger, and intensity that had defined his final hours. Every choice, every step, every heartbeat had mattered, and in the quiet aftermath, the full scope of the night's events became terrifyingly clear. As he moved away from the immediate danger, the weight of what had transpired settled in. Foolio's final hours were more than a sequence of events. They were a carefully orchestrated dance of instinct, calculation, and circumstance. And while the city around him began to awaken, the story of that night, the tension, the unseen forces, and the raw unpredictability remained etched in memory, a shocking testament to the fragility and intensity of every decision made when the stakes are life itself. What happened to Foolio in those final hours is a story that few will ever truly understand. Every move, every decision, every moment of instinct and calculation shaped a night that was as intense as it was shocking. The unseen forces, the whispered warnings, the sudden encounters, they all came together to create a timeline that nobody could have predicted. And now, you've seen it. The tension, the danger, and the relentless uncertainty that defined his last hours. If this story shocked you, just imagine the details that are still out there, waiting to be revealed. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the full truth behind moments like these. Drop a